All right, this is the forenoon. It is part 2 of the book. It continues on from when Adam is, when he falls asleep in the smokehouse after he has basically cried himself to sleep. So, let's begin. I must have dozed off for just a moment or two, and I was awakened by the sound of voices. I crept to the door of the smokehouse and put my eye against a thin crack in the closing. And there, no more than 3 or 4 paces away, were 2 redcoats, standing there in the morning sunshine, looking, or so it appeared, directly at me. "Now take that shed, Sergeant," said one of them. "It could be stuffed as full with Yankees as a goose with pudding, and us none the wiser." "You have a point there, Blythe, indeed. Or that woodpile there, a possibility, no doubt. They are tricky devils, they are. Not to be trusted. I would sooner trust my wife." There you have the nature of them, Blythe. Sly as women. What a put down. That's horrible. For women and for them. You and me could be standing there having a word with each other, just 2 honest men, attempting to do their duty according to a solemn oath they have sworn to the king, and they'd like as not be planning to pot us from the window up there. The devil! I don't say it's so. I say it could be so. Then just inform me, Sergeant, why we don't take a torch to the whole dirty pile and burn it to the ground. That's not for you and me to decide, Blythe. That is in the nature of the policy. A third redcoat joined them and said, "The captain says to stand to parade on the common, Sergeant. We are marching." Marching? That's what the captain said, marching, and without a wink of sleep. I say it's a shame, and I don't care who hears that. There's enough feather bolsters in this town to bed down the regiment. That would be the quartering act. The law is that if the British Army is there and they say they want your house, you have to give it over. Okay, going back to the book. I am merely communicating orders, Sergeant. The 3 of them walked out of my area of view, and then I heard the sound of bugles and the rattle of drums. Whether all the redcoats were marching or whether it was only their regiment, with another regiment left to guard and search the town, I had no idea. But when I opened the door a few inches, it was clear as far as I could see, and I felt that this was my chance to get out of the trap of the smokehouse. You might think that with my father dead, my own fear would have lessened, but it didn't work that way, and all I knew was that I was alone, and who would take care of me or see for me now unless it was myself? When they spoke of burning the place, I saw myself trapped in the shed, roasting to death. I only wanted to get out of there and go where I might never see a redcoat again. So, with the coast clear, I leaped out. Still hanging on to my gun, I raced across the backyard and garden of the house, down a little slope, and plunged into a fringe of woods there, never glancing behind me or even to the side, but only eager to find the cover of the brush. It was still too early in the season for bushes and underbrush to be in leaf and provide cover, and the skin of the woods was only about 30 paces across. But just beyond it, there was a stone wall. And those stone walls are going to be very important, by the way. And behind the stone wall, I would have shelter, with the open meadows as a place of retreat. But no sooner had I plunged through the woods than I almost ran into 2 redcoats who were making their way along the stone wall. When they saw me, one of them let out a cry for me to halt, and the other threw up his musket and fired. I wasn't more than 20 feet from him, so he might as well have hit me if his piece had fired. But it flashed in the pan without taking it in the chamber, and I sailed over the wall as if I had wings. Well, he certainly had some kind of angel, didn't he? Once in the open meadow, I had no fear that they would catch me. I had long legs, and many was the foot race I had won. But the redcoats were burdened by their heavy uniforms and their enormous muskets and the big backpacks they wore on their backs. That's going to be an advantage for the colonists. I stretched my legs and fled across the meadow as if the devil himself were after me, and I felt that way too, holding my speed for the quarter of a mile that separated me from the stone wall that bound the opposite side of the meadow. There, panting exhausted, I fell across the wall into 2 arms that embraced me like a still vice. A vice is a clamp. Okay. I clawed and twisted and struggled and tried in every way I knew to break the hold until I was brought back to sanity by a voice in my ear telling me, "Easy, easy, my lad. I have no desire to harm you. I only don't want you exploding that bird gun in my face out of your excitement. Excitement is a bad state for a body. Many a good man would be alive today if he weren't dead from excitement. Now just take a good look at me. My name is Solomon Chandler out of Lincoln Town, and I come across the meadows to see you running like a deer in flight. But them two redcoats you fled from, they're standing back there and none too quick to come across the meadow hunting us. Just look and see and be calm. I relaxed and he let go of me, and sure enough, back on the other side of the field, the redcoats were standing and watching, but making no move to come after me. And if they should take a notion to come, said Solomon Chandler, do we want to turn our backs to them? Or maybe keep a cool head on our shoulders, since we are 2 and 2. Even odds, my lad, and a gun is a commoner, an equalizer, believe me. I stared at him now. He was a tall man, a full head taller than I was, and long in his arms and his legs and skinny as a starved cow. But it didn't weaken him, being skinny. I had felt his grip and knew that. He had a long face, a long hooked nose, a jutting chin, and 2 pale blue eyes, deep sunk in their sockets. When he smiled, he showed a mouthful of broken yellow teeth, with wide gaps between them. He wore a provision bag over one shoulder, a powder horn, a bag of shot, and a water bottle over the other. He carried a rifle as tall as he was. His hair was snow white, and altogether he was the most freckled man I had ever seen, and possibly the ugliest. You don't know them, I gasped, still trying to get back my breath. You don't know them. You don't know what they did over there. We were standing on the common, and they fired us. They shot us down like dogs. They killed my father. Oh, no, Jehovah, damn them. Jehovah is another name for God. Did they do that? Did they kill your father, your own blood? I nodded, and all my control went, and I burst into tears and put my face in my hands and cried like a little boy, full of shame and sick all through, but unable to halt my crying. Now, that's the right thing, said Solomon Chandler. Let the tears run freely. Grief should not be denied. Cry until you are free of it, boy. The Almighty knows that you have reason for it. Don't be ashamed for me. I have 6 children and 19 grandchildren, and each one of them is as dear to me as you were to your own father. May he rest in peace. I was able to stop then, and I was grateful to him, for as strange as his words were, they calmed me and soothed me, as if for the first time I actually realized that life would continue, and that my father's death and what had happened to our village did not mean the end of the world, or the end of everything. Glancing across the wall, I saw that the 2 British soldiers were gone. Solomon Chandler was asking my name. Adam Cooper. Adam Cooper. All right, Adam, my boy. Suppose we walk a spell and put a mile between them redcoats and us, and then we'll just sit for a bit, and you will tell me what happened back there. He reached into his waistcoat pocket and took out a silver watch. 12 minutes after 9, he said, and you've lost your youth and come to manhood. All in a few hours, Adam Cooper. Oh, that is painful. That is indeed. I wish it was true that I've come to manhood, I said bitterly. Give it time, Adam. Give it time. And then he set off with a long, brisk stride. I had to have run to keep up with him. He set off westward, and for about a mile, we walked parallel to the Concord Road. Then we turned south into the woods, climbed a hillock, and came to a tiny grassy glade, screened from every side by brush and wood. I had thought that I knew all the countryside hereabouts, but Solomon Chandler knew it better than I did, every field and fence and coppice. Once we were in the glade, he asked me whether I was hungry, and when I nodded, he opened his provision bag and took out of it cold roast chicken, a piece of ham, bread, and a boiled fruit pudding. He spread a cloth on the ground, laid out the food, cutting up so that I should have no hesitancy about helping myself, and then pressed me to eat. I felt that it was wrong of me to be so hungry. I felt that it was sinful in the face of all that I had seen and all that had happened. But after I tasted the first bite of food, I ate as ravenously as a starving man. I suppose it was my hunger and the circumstances that made it so. Yet the food tasted better than anything I had ever tasted or eaten. Between the 2 of us, we finished the ham and the chicken and the fruit pudding, washing it down with water from our bottles. Only some of the bread remained, and this Solomon Chandler wrapped carefully and stowed back in his provision bag. Then he stretched his legs and his arms and said to me, "Now, Adam, confess that you feel a trifle better." I nodded. Okay, continuing. Life is potent, Adam. If it wasn't, you and I wouldn't be sitting here. You witnessed a mighty terrible thing, but men are clever when it comes to doing sinful and beastly things to other men, and what you witnessed was not the first time, and it won't be the last time either. But life has a special quality of asserting itself, and that's a very important thing to learn about. It is. My father's dead. Talking like this won't bring him back. That it won't, Adam. Be sure of that. Nothing's going to bring him back. You know, laddie, when a young man like yourself first watches the death of someone close and dear to him, it's a bitter shock, it is. But if it was you lying out there on the common and your father out here, then there would be no consolation whatsoever, none at all that I could offer. The natural way is to let the old go, let the young live, and taste life. Your father went too soon, but oh, my heavens, laddie, life is only a day, a long, long day, but that's all. I am 61 years old, and it's like yesterday that I was a boy your own age, and a year older when I shipped out of Boston town to see the whole world, and then back to be married and raise my own, and then off to the French War, and all of it comes down to a moment. The Lord God Jehovah, he is eternal and timeless, he that was and is and always will be, but you and me, laddie, we have a little bit to do, and we do it as best we know how. And that's just about as much as you can say for us or for your good father, may his soul rest. Now I have said enough. I could sit here and talk you deaf, dumb, and blind. I could. But I want you to talk to me. I want you to tell me what went on back there and just how it happened, all of it. How it began and then everything that transpired. He was not to be resisted, this old man, Solomon Chandler. He never raised his voice, and everything he said had a trace of apology in it. Yet I found myself telling him every detail of the previous night, how the rider came to warn us, how we assembled on the common, and how the British came. I left out none of it, nor did I attempt to polish it up and make us out to be heroes of any kind. I told him that so far as I could see, not one shot was fired from our side. I told him what kind of cowards we were, and how we ran as if the devil himself was behind each one of us. When I had finished, he remained silent for a while, and I could see he was thinking over all that I had said. Meanwhile, he had taken an old black pipe out of his pocket and a plug of tobacco just as black. Thoughtfully, he shaved tobacco off the plug and stuffed the pipe. I was wondering whether he'd kindled a fire to light the pipe, but after he had taken a draw or two on it, he put it back into his pocket, unlit and unsmoked. "Cowards you were, Adam?" he asked at last. "Yes, cowards." "Oh, I think you've got something to learn, laddie, about the nature of cowardice and bravery. It takes no courage to fire a gun and to kill, merely a state of mind that makes killing possible. Such a state of mind does not come easily to decent folk, but we will see." He rose to his feet and picked up his long rifle. "Come along now, Adam, if you're minded to throw in your lot with me." "I can't go home now." "Then come along, boy." "Where?" "In good time, all in good time. You know where the Millbrook forks? You know where the Millbrook forks? In other words, where the brook breaks into two streams." "I know the place, yes." "Well, son, there's a little pasture south of it where I imagine we'll find a few sturdy Middlesex lads. It's a long way ahead of us, and what's started ain't easily finished." We set off again, Solomon Chandler walking more slowly now. We cut across the fields, over stone walls, and through bits of wood, but still more or less paralleling the Concord Road. North of us we heard the sound of drums and the shrilling of pipes, faint at first, but then clearer, and the sudden panic in me was eased by Chandler's hand on my shoulder. "Easy, easy, boy," he said. "Their music never hurt a living soul, and you just make up your mind to stroll along as just as casual as if you was walking out with your lassie. If you have one now, do you?" I nodded. "Tell me her name." "Ruth Simmons," I whispered. "Oh, then that would be Joseph Simmons's daughter, the Smith black there, am I right?" "Yes, sir." "Bless my heart. Now, do you know, Adam, the last time I set eyes on her, she came no higher than my kneecap. And what kind of lovers are you? Are you betrothed?" "I'm too young to be betrothed." "Bite your tongue with such words. How old are you, boy?" 15, I answered. 15? Now, in my own days, that was never too young for a betrothal, or for marriage either. But we're a careful lot these days, and they say a lad should have this and that before he takes him a lady. Myself, I was married at 17 years and never regretted it. Good heavens, no. And you're a big, upstanding lad. To look at you, I would have said you were 17 at least. Johnny Harrington was 17, and they killed him on the common. "Take your mind off such things now, Adam," he said gently. "Don't worry the dead. Let them lie in peace." We topped a little hill, and there, half a mile to the north of us, and plainly visible, was the high road. His arm over my shoulder, Solomon Chandler paused there and pointed toward the long column of redcoats, stretching up and down the whole length of the road that was in our view. At this distance, they were like toy soldiers, small, harmless, and impersonal. Have a good long look at them, Adam. It's a healthy business to regard what you fear. Look at it long and calm, and you will find that it calms you inside. I did as he said, and bit by bit the panic in me worked out. My heart beat less strongly, and the awful mindless fear of them began to subside. While this was taking place inside of me, Solomon Chandler talked on, his tone as chatty and comfortable as if we were sitting in Mother's kitchen, and not out here in the open with the redcoats only half a mile away. Study them, Adam, he said, and realize their stupidity and or ignorance. They have a great contempt for us, and they call us peasants and louts, but not one in the 10 of them can read or write his letters. A good half of them are convicts, cutthroats, and footpads, serving out their time in His Majesty's colors instead of in jail. The rest of them are poor, ignorant devils with a religion as cloudy and superstitious as their minds. They are a poor substitute for machines. They do what they are told to do, and when there is no one to tell them, the life goes out of them. Where are they marching? To Concord, no doubt, having heard that we put some shot and gunpowder away there. But it will be easier going there than coming back. Each of them carries his brown best, 15 pounds of regulation musket that I would not give you 6 pence for. Mind you, they don't even have a backside on that gun of theirs. It's a handy tool for a bayonet, and murderous when they stand up against you as they did on the common. But a single shot will never find you. They don't know how to aim the thing. It kicks like a mule, but the bullet carries only 100 paces, and the pack on their back weighs 40 pounds more. 5 pounds of shot and water, a heavy spun uniform, canvas leggings, and a wig under that fool hat they wear? Oh, yes, indeed. It will be easier going than coming. We won't try to stop them then? Oh, no, Adam, not at all. It was a shame that a terrible thing had to happen at your home. But we won't try to stop them now. Let them march. There are good boys at Concord to move away whatever must be saved, and there will be good boys at the Old North Bridge, too, if they should desire to cross it, all in good time, and we'll be going along now. We marched off again, the old man walking as easily and casually as if there were no redcoat within 20 miles, instead of 1,000 of them a stone's throw away, and I must say that it had its effect on me. I could feel my mood changing, where my whole body and every thought that had been saturated with grief for my father, now I could feel that same grief hardening like a knot in my belly. Whatever lay ahead of me, I at least began to sense that I would be able to face it, and the old man seemed to know the change in me. He nodded approvingly and said, "We are an old race of people, Adam, and there is not any fear that can't be faced and dealt with. Make yourself compatible with it, and it shrivels. That's been our way this long time. You might ask yourself, how does old Solomon Chandler know what he knows about the British? Well, I went soldiering with them all through the French War, and I learned some knowledge of them, believe me. You know what they called me, laddie? They call us damn Yankees. That's the new learning. Then they called us Jillies, which is a Scot word for peasant. Hey, you suffering, thick-headed Jilly, you. Damn you. That was a common form of polite address by their officers, who looked down upon us with contempt, and that we were not gentlemen. The artful ways they had. There was one of them, a captain or something of the sort, who once asked my opinion on a matter of the weather. I answered him, "It will be fair weather, Jehovah willing." And he says back to me, "What the devil are you, Jillies, Jews or something, with your damn Jew names and your talk of Jehovah this and Jehovah that?" And what did you say to that, I want to know? Tell you, Adam, I am slow to retort. A man's better for thinking a bit more before he says his piece. That's true. And I looked at the redcoat man up and down. I looked at him, and I said very quiet and gentle to him, "It is only by the mercy of the same Lord God Jehovah that I don't cut your throat." He saw that I meant it too. And did he bother you for it, Solomon? Heavens, no. He became a gentleman, like he was born and bred to be. We came to the lane that runs north and south from Lincoln Town to the Concord Road. And I remembered how, only the autumn before, Father and I had been out hunting in the hours after dawn, and I shot 2 fat rabbits south on the lane, and we were nigh freezing to death when we got to Cousin Joshua Dover's house in Lincoln, and there it was for the first time that I had a good drink of hot rum, beat up with butter and sugar. The day before this I could remember nothing about Father but the birchings and his anger and sarcasm. It was curious that I now recalled so many good things and discovered that the bad things were not so bad, after all. Today, as we reached the lane, which was sometimes called the Lincoln Lane and sometimes the Indian Trace, we saw 9 men walking up it from the south, all of them with guns and sober faces. and we waited there in the lane for them. Some of them I knew by sight, and one of them was cousin Joshua Dover, and another was his 19-year-old son, Mattathias. They grinned when they recognized me, and then they saw from my face that something bitter and sad had happened. We would have our Thanksgiving dinners usually together with the Dovers and the Simmonses, and with the family of Mother's brother, Simon Hatch, so I knew the Dovers well enough. Mattathias took me out with my bird gun the very first day I used it and instructed me on how to load it and prime it. He was a heavy, slow-moving person, but kind and soft in speech, just as his father was. His father had studied for the pulpit, but given it up later to take over his grandfather's store and flour mill. Yet he kept on studying and had the reputation of being the finest Hebrew scholar in Middlesex County. I had heard Father say that he maintained a correspondence with ministers all over New England, and that he was the most consulted man in the colonies when it came to subtle and confusing interpretations of text, and had even made a number of journeys to Providence to check his facts against the old scrolls that the Jews kept there. When he saw the expression on my face, he went straight to me and took me by the arms. Solomon Chandler meanwhile explained the circumstances of our meeting and something about what had happened. "Your father?" Cousin Dover asked. "They shot him down dead." I didn't cry again. I was finished with that. I felt cold and bleak, but I also felt that whatever I did from here on would be done because I willed it so, not because I was a boy who couldn't control his emotions. "I think you had best tell them all about it, hard as it is, Adam," Solomon Chandler said. So I told the story again, but more shortly now, and harder and crisper with the things that had happened. I was angry now. It was a slow thing, this beginning of anger inside of me, and it was not until afterwards that I knew it was happening and growing and curdling. When I finished, there was a silence as heavy as sorrow, and no movement or motion but the pressure of Cousin Dover's arm around my shoulder, just the silence in the pretty country lane, with the bees humming about their spring work, and the birds singing and the west wind sighing, and faint, ever so faint in the distance, the rattle of British drums. They absorbed it and digested it, and then they composed themselves to it and mixed their horror and anger and indignation. And then they asked questions with the quiet uncertainty of people visiting the home of a friend who had died. How many of our people were slain? I don't know. Can you guess, boy? Maybe 8, 10, 20. There's no way for me to tell. Do you know some for certain? Some. What were their names, boy? Caleb Harrington, his son Jonathan, Jonas Parker, he was the militia leader for our town, Samuel Hodley, and my father. Maybe the Reverend was slain. I'm not sure. Their faces became even harder, and one or two of them rubbed their eyes and stared at the ground. You're sure there was no provocation from us? I saw none. Our guns weren't cocked. Father and the Reverend, they insisted the guns not be cocked, and that would prevent accidents from happening. So they started it. No matter now, another said. It's the finishing now. Is the news off to Waverly? Solomon Chandler asked. We sent a rider off with the first gunfire. Where's the assembly, Solomon? Asked Cousin Dover. Where we planned for it, south of the Millbrook Fork in Ashley's pasture. So come along, I say, come along. 11 of us now, we marched on, following the cow track that led from the lane to the Atkins's farm. At the farm there was Levi Atkins, his brother Seth, his father old Moses Atkins, and the 4 Atkins boys. They were armed and ready, and apparently they had been waiting a long while for the men from Lincolntown. Now there were 18 of us, and we cut through the Hancock woods toward the Mill Brook. When we came out of the woods, I could have cried out with joy, for there was Cousin Simmons and the Reverend and Tom Dover. I don't know how I can explain what that meant to me. It doesn't make much sense for me to say that after what had happened on the common, I had the feeling that the whole village had died. Not only the dead men who lay on the common, but the whole village dead and gone and never again to be the way it was. It was a heavy and sad feeling, combining with the loss of my father, the loss of everyone else who was dear to me, and when I saw Cousin Simmons and the others from home, that broke and went away. And without shame or care for who was watching, I threw myself into his big arms and let him hold me as tight as if I were a little shaver, and he my own father. Then I thought he'd break my ribs, the way he clutched me in those blacksmith arms of his, and when he let go of me, I saw that the tears were pouring down his cheeks. God be praised, he said. The people who were with me watched respectfully. We were not used to war and death in those days. We were plain people, and nothing like this had ever happened to us before. Solomon Chandler took off his hat, shook his hands with the Reverend, and suggested that this would be an appropriate time for some sort of benediction. The Reverend wiped his eyes and nodded. Those wearing hats removed them, and the Reverend said quietly, "For thy everlasting mercy, Almighty God, we thank thee." Then the hats went back on, and we struck out for Ashley's pasture. I heard one of the men from Lincoln comment that it was a short and peculiar benediction, and that he didn't think much of a preacher who couldn't draw some moral out of the events of today. But I guess the Reverend could be excused. He had been through a lot, and I knew that he had always been fond of me, even though I once overheard him telling Mother that when it came to plain, downright intelligence, I couldn't hold a candle to my younger brother Levi. We were 21 strong when we reached Ashley's pasture, and there were over 30 men there already, and waiting for us, and while we remained there during the next hour, men kept coming in to join us, by ones and twos and threes, so that eventually there were at least 100 of us gathered there. They had several breakfast fires going, and the first thing Solomon Chandler and the other smokers did was to get hot coals to start their pipes. While the Reverend never actually came out and condemned smoking as part of the devil's witchery, he did take a very dim view of the practice, and no one in our home had ever smoked. However, when Solomon Chandler offered me a draw on his pipe, I didn't refuse. I guess it was that morning that I became a smoker. All right, that's the end of that chapter. There's only 2 questions for you to answer. What was the British's perspective of the colonists? And if I haven't already given the lecture on the American place in the global war, or America's place in global dominance, you're going to see that there's a very simple statement about both views. The colonists were seen by the British as country hicks, as basically low class, and the colonists saw them as snobs, but now you need to prove that. Where can you see that? And then, of course, how does Solomon know about the British? What experiences did he have that he learned about the British? And how does this knowledge of his affect his own point of view about the British? So go ahead and get those done.